You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, it's another heck of a wonderful episode. This was special in particular because a lot of folks who've known me for a while they probably know me for talking about the year of 2013 being my rebirth year, and that was the year I got started in personal and professional development, listening and turning my car to Automobile University with legendary names like Zig Ziglar, Diana Boer, and the names go on and on, especially John Maxwell. Well, one of those wonderful voices jumped out of my car, metaphorically speaking, and onto this freaking podcast. Because today's guest in particular, you're in for a treat. It's like a whole freaking golden corral of desserts with this one, folks. Because she is an award-winning, best-selling author, legendary CPAE, folks, a Hall of Fame speaker in the NSA. The one, the only queen of productivity herself. Heck, even probably have to call her the Empress of Productivity, who is on a mission because of some unfortunate circumstances that happened back in 2019. But she's able to turn her pain into power with all of it. So let's give it up for the one, the only, legendary and stupendous Laura Stack. How you doing today, Laura?
My gosh. I would have been on your show just to get that introduction. You're making me blush over here. My goodness. Well, hello and thank you. I did not expect that warm welcome, but I will take it. I will take it, my friend. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you too. I'm like dead serious about that one because I've been following you for a while on the social medias. I'm like, all right, I'll put her on a list of folks to promote in the future. Hopefully I'll invite her on my show, and then eventually got better as a podcast host, and you put the call out, the clarion calls like, hey, any podcasts about mental health and spreading the good word of the Johnny Ambassadors program. It's like, hey, you know what? This is my opportunity. Let me put my name in the hat right now and see if she says yes, and voila, you're here.
And here I am. I will take any opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing. Yes, I'm still doing all of my Productivity Pro work. But sadly, November 20th of 2019, our 19-year-old son, Johnny, died by suicide. We were so shocked and crushed and surprised by what happened and decided to form a nonprofit, Johnny's Ambassadors, named in honor of our son, to tell his story and really to share a warning about what happened to him, which the basic story, and we can talk more about this, is that he became psychotic. He was dabbing what are very high potency concentrate forms of marijuana here where we live in Colorado. And he had incredibly delusional thinking that the mob was after him, that the FBI wanted him, that everybody knew everything about him. And sadly, in his psychosis, he did take his life. So I wrote a book about that. And I so appreciate you having me because we are really trying to get the word out about the harms of today's marijuana, which is not your granddad's weed, especially in adolescents. So that's our big focus, Dom. I'm really careful about, there are people who have seizure disorders. There are people I know who use it who have, extreme autism and cancer, very, debilitating conditions. And so that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about youth who are using very concentrated forms of marijuana to get high. It's not medicinal in any way. So I just want to say that up front so that people don't misunderstand really what we're doing and what our mission is.
Yes, indeed. And once again, so sorry for what happened to your son. It's definitely a
Hmm.
sad situation. And
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I was in bed for 6 months, just it's just something you would never, ever think would happen. Johnny used to go to National Speakers Association youth conferences. He was a leader at NSA youth conference. He was handsome, smiling, so intelligent. He had a 4.0 GPA. We got a perfect SAT score in math, 800 out of 800. I mean, he was truly a genius in math. He had a scholarship to Colorado State University. So handsome. I'll show you his photo here. Just a really a handsome young man. He was just like, might be a child you would just know down the street. He played the piano, he played guitar, he was in sports, he played soccer and cross country, he had a brown belt in karate, he liked playing video games. He was just your typical teenager. And a lot of people say, well, that could never happen to my kid, because my kid has straight A's. Well, so did mine, and my kid, we're Christian. That could never happen. So are we. Johnny loved the Lord, was baptized twice, just for good riddance, he would say, just to make sure. He was asking to go to church just a few days before he died. Like, it didn't, just because you're Christian doesn't mean your child can't become addicted to drugs. And so I just think there's a lot of misperceptions out there. And after a few months, I put a Facebook post on, this is how it started, on my Facebook page. And I just asked people, do you know what dabbing is? And, you've been in this business now, you said you reinvented yourself in 2013, so you're many, many years now. And try as hard as we can, right? It's hard to get viewers and shares and people to subscribe, right? It's hard to do that. And in this one Facebook post, currently it has 21,000 shares on this Facebook post. And I knew it was God. There was no way I would be able to I couldn't even do that in the 30 years I've been the productivity pro, Dom. Like that's impossible. And most of the comments, 3,000 comments, were people saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what is a dab. Is that a bad dance move, right?
That's what I was thinking too when I first started. Yeah.
No. So do you know what dabs are, Dom?
Oh, I know now. It used to be a big thing, at least a good couple of years ago. It used to be a bad dance. You put your head in the shoulder.
Yeah.
That's what came to my head. But after reading it, it's like, no, it's not that.
Well, and I knew then that, that was so clear to me. It was such a clear message that with that many parents who, like me, just didn't know, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. I mean, we were a very involved family, home-based business. I purposefully worked out of the home so that we would be with them. My husband also works for our company. He was always around. I mean, all the protective factors you talk about, right? That we had all that. And yet we live in Colorado, which legalized recreational marijuana, the first state to do so. Medical was in 2000, recreational was in 2012. And in 2014, it kind of came out into the market, right? Commercialized. And Johnny was a freshman in high school. And I had never heard of these dabs, which, if I could explain basically how it works, you take a plant, all right? You take a marijuana plant, okay? Let's say this is the plant. And you dump a bunch of solvent into the plant. Let's say this is butane, right? So you dump the solvent into the plant, which breaks off the trichomes, which are on the buds, right, which contain the THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the psychoactive chemical, right, that makes you high in marijuana. So it breaks off that THC and it goes into a tray with this liquid butane, right, mixed now with chemicals. They throw the plant away. Okay. So there's no more plant. So you have to get out of your mind when, you know, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and we're like, hey, peace, love, and let's roll a joint with some grass, and right, that there's no plant. So now you have this THC and butane, which they filter and extract and distill and make it into other products, dabs, for example, wax. Some of them kind of look like earwax or beeswax. Some are called shatter. If you drop it, it looks like it could break. There's live rosin, there's bubble hash, there's batter, BADDER, which looks like cake batter. They're typically named for the type that they look like. They make up names for this stuff. And back in the day, when I was in high school and we were rolling joints, you know, with grass, I used marijuana a couple times. I didn't like it. And I never used it again after high school, but I remember, you know, passing it around, and you would share a joint, right? I mean, it was like, you couldn't even get a hold of it when you could. And back then it was 2% to 5% if you could get, you know, the good stuff, right? Like Maui, Wowie, you know, or some of those. 2 to 5% THC. Now, the concentrates, the distillates, the shatters, the dabs, the waxes can be up to 99% pure. One chemist even says that they have created a 100% pure THC vape. There's now THC crystalline, THCA, which you use like smokable cocaine. It's like crack. Literally, it looks like crack, same crystals. You put it in the same pen, you know, light it with a butane torch. You take a little dab. That's why they call it a dab of this wax. You heat up your rig or your pen, whatever you're using, with a blowtorch, and you touch the concentrate to it, which makes it kind of sizzle, and the toxic fumes come off of it, and you inhale it. And it's incredibly potent. It's not even the same category of marijuana. It's a narcotic. It's a hard drug. You are simply using the chemical concentrated into many, many, many times. So if an entire joint, let's say, were 18 milligrams of marijuana, one dab can be 100 milligrams of marijuana. If you buy a gram of it and it's 80% concentrate, you have 800 milligrams of THC in that gram. Some of the candy bars that are here have 1,000 milligrams in a package. I mean, and the thing is kids have no clue that this is a different weed. And because what are the parents saying? You know, I used to smoke weed, right? It's just weed. I used it when I was a kid. I'm fine. I turned out okay. Because anybody over 25 years old, Dom, has no idea. If they have not walked into a dispensary since 2015, they don't even know what this stuff is. So it's shocking for most people, as it was for me, to discover for the first time in my son's in a drawer something called a nectar kit, right? And my husband and I are looking at this sticky like wax, and we're going, "What is this?" I'm like, "What is this?" You know, and we had to look it up, and it wasn't until many years after Johnny had been using marijuana before we even knew what the product was that he was using. And by then, he had started to become suicidal. had bouts of psychosis. And we see that in the emergency rooms here in Colorado all the time, with kids overdosing on massive doses of concentrate use and not understanding how potent it is, and coming in with poisoning, vomiting, massive psychosis, in panic. They have to sedate them often because they are so out of control, they can't get them to calm down. So we're just warning everybody, and that's why I wrote The Dangerous Truth About Today's Marijuana. It's 309 pages of Johnny's life and death story, Dom. I wrote it during COVID because what the heck else was I going to do, right?
Right.
So he died in November. COVID hit in March. So we were still just really, reeling from our grief when COVID hit. And so I thought, you know what? This is the Lord's way of me having the time, the space, the ability to start a nonprofit and write nonstop for 6 months and get Johnny's story in writing. And so we are really hoping to get the word out through podcasts like yours that these high potency products for teens, for adolescents whose brains are still forming, cause a great deal of harm, right? I mean, there's a reason they're not legal until you're 21 anyway. And everybody goes, oh, well, it's not legal till you're 21. Well, guess what? If you have medical marijuana, do you have that where you live, Dom, medical marijuana? What state are you?
Oh, I'm in Maryland.
Okay. Oh boy.
Yeah.
So, Maryland, it's coming. But here's what happens. Remember the old pill mills with the opioid crisis? Remember the pill mills? And you could go to a doctor and you could pay, hundreds of dollars, whatever, get your prescription. You make up some kind of malady, right? They make up some kind of pain. They would write you a prescription for OxyContin, and you'd go fill it. And all these young kids were dying, right? 18, 19. So now all you have to do, the pill mill docs have been replaced with the pot shop docs. See? Mm-hmm. And as soon as you turn 18 here in Colorado, you go to your pot shop doc and you make up some kind of malady that can't be proven. Let's say you say, I get migraines, right? You pay your few $100s to your pot shop doc, who then exchanges that for your red card. So now you, at 18 years old, can legally walk into a dispensary and buy shatter, wax, any kind of concentrate, 40 grams a day. It's not tracked. And then you go to the next dispensary, you can buy another 40 grams. And the next one, this is called looping. They're supposed to have limits, but nobody's tracking it until Bill 1317, which we just passed. Then you go to your high school and your middle school and you resell it. So what happens here is that in high schools, in 5 minutes, kids can get marijuana. You know who has the med cards. You know who's dealing it. And Dom, this is perfectly legal. No black market required. I mean, it's not legal to sell it to the other kids, but everyone says, oh, they're getting it on the streets. Oh, they're getting it in the black markets. Oh, the dispensaries are not carding them. Oh, they're hitting up homeless people outside the dispensary and giving them a $5 and having them go. No, they're not. They're just going and getting their legal med cards. The doctor is protected. We don't know to this day who gave Johnny a med card when he was 18 and he was perfectly healthy, not one thing wrong. So I guess, Dom, there's just this real dichotomy between what is it, a real need or a use of medical marijuana, right, for children who have actual debilitating illnesses and seizures and things like that. The other side of the spectrum are all the kids that are using it to get high. And it's now become the drug of choice. You can't get cigarettes, you can't get alcohol here in Colorado, but it's real easy to get marijuana. And their brains aren't formed. And sadly, THC looks like another natural molecule in our bodies called anandamide, and it locks into that receptor and blocks it. So it prevents normal brain development and function in our young people. It arrests that brain development. MRIs show how thin the prefrontal cortices are in young people who start using marijuana. So until you're 25 as a young woman, or 28 now they're saying as a young man, your brain is still forming. So even though, yeah, it might be legal at 21, medical doctors highly discourage any use, at least, just delay as long as possible, and hopefully never by the time you reach that age. There's a 5-fold increased risk of psychoses if you use at a young age, high frequency, high potency. That's the trifecta. Young age, high frequency, high potency equals much greater chance of psychoses being triggered, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, anxiety. All these things are caused by marijuana. A lot of people go, oh, they're just self-medicating. No, these things are causing the mental illness, not the other way around. A 7-fold increase, sadly, in suicide. The National Institutes of Health just came out with a study here in the US that said that marijuana use is correlated with suicide. So we have all kinds of research, Dom, that we've put together, a lot of education for our parents. In addition to my book, we have a weekly webinar series that we have with doctors. I'm not a clinician, so we invite them onto our scientific advisory board. And we do webinars, seminars, toolkits, videos. We have graphics. We have all sorts of literature that I would be more than happy to communicate with anybody on your show, because I'm hoping there's a lot of parents listening who are kind of like me, kind of thinking, oh, well, kids will be kids. It's harmless. It's medical, right? It must be safe. It's legal, right? And to just, take another look and do your research and your due diligence. And I would love to provide your listeners with any resources, Dom.
Man, oh man. And to be honest, your book is one heck of a resource within itself, because not only it chronicles Johnny's life, but also is backed up with tons and tons of research and tons of statistics that a lot of folks need to consider, because the whole THC thing, because most folks, they may see the title of the book and they're like, the heck is she talking about? She must be lying.
Right.
Yeah. And
I had to document it very heavily, because no one really hears the narrative on the science side, right? They hear the narrative in the media, in politics, oh, we need to legislate this nationally because we need the tax dollars, right? All of the narrative that comes out of the marijuana industry, because they want people to believe it's safe, because they need to addict the children while they're young, because the greatest users are in that younger demographic up to 25 years old, right? You don't suddenly at 65 years old typically go, oh, I think I'm going to use marijuana, right? I mean, you start when you're a kid, and they say they don't market to the kids, but by making it seem so harmless, the parents aren't really paying a lot of attention, and they don't specifically say, you are not allowed to use marijuana. They either look the other way, tell them, oh, it's probably fine. It's probably good for your stress, right? They say things that inadvertently, not knowing the harms, are incorrect and could actually be causing damage, mental health issues, brain problems, and sadly, in the case of my son, suicide. He came over to dinner 3 days before he died, and he said, I just want you to know that you were right. And I said, about what? And he said, you told me that marijuana would hurt my brain, and it has ruined my mind and my life. And I'm really sorry. And I love you. And I missed it. I didn't hear that as suicidal. I heard it more as trying to reconcile, because we'd had a pretty rocky road since he started using marijuana at 14 years old and died at 19. And 3 days later, sadly, he was gone. And we found journals in his apartment after he died. And he was writing about the mob is after me and everybody knows everything about me. And clearly the psychosis was pretty heavy. And so we don't know to this day, why, but we know that he'd had some sort of brain attack with extreme psychosis, thinking organized crime was after him, just a lot of delusional thinking. And it's totally preventable. That's the thing, Dom, it's like, dang, how come we live in Colorado? What the luck, why didn't we move? I have a lot of regrets about, just my ignorance, not understanding it. And now that I do, I feel such a need to share with other parents what happened to my son. I know 100% if he hadn't used marijuana, that he would still be with us here today. It took my son. And it's so counter to what you hear, where people want to protect, their medicine. They want to be able to get high, to use marijuana. And again, adult use, I would never recommend it, but we in America vote by the ballot box, that's how we make decisions. I'm talking about children. And even pro marijuana people do not disagree that youth should not use marijuana. And we just really want to reinforce why that is, not only because the marijuana is so different today, but because it really impacts the brain. And we know that from science, that the brain is forming and THC alters the structure and the development. So as a parent, grandparent, uncle, aunt, teacher, law enforcement officer, counselor, legislator, anybody, who works with youth and has youth in their lives, we just really feel the need to get this message out to them, Dom. And I'm just so grateful that you're giving me a chance to talk about Johnny.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. It's so, well, definitely honored to have you on the show, and definitely good that you're doing this and was able to turn your pain into power. So any advice for those listening right now that may be parents going through grief? Because we actually had a past guest on the show who also had to bury one of his children, sadly. It wasn't to the dabbing, but it was something totally different, athletic related.
Yeah. I would just say to, first of all, be educated yourself. Go to johnny'sambassadors.org, and we have an education menu, and it's all free. Yeah, and avail yourself of all of the resources. Really try to understand yourself, what we're dealing with, right? Before you try to approach your child. Now, if your youth is using marijuana currently, it is imperative that they stop. And there are programs, treatments, interventions, all sorts of different centers. CIP, cannabis-induced psychosis, is now fairly well known. It's in the DSM, the DSM-5, the psychology manual. It is a diagnosis. It does take 3 weeks for marijuana to leave the body. So when teens stop using it, they will get extremely agitated. It's called cannabis withdrawal syndrome. Many times they need help in a rehabilitation center to detoxify from marijuana, and people don't even know about that. So I would do everything in your power to understand it, to talk with your child about it, especially if they're young, 8, 9, 10, 12, right? We want to build a healthy fear of what marijuana can do to your mental capacity. Right? Alcohol is really bad for your liver, right? Smoking's really bad for your lungs. The alcohol is water soluble. The next day it leaves your body. THC, 3 weeks, and it harms the mind. So if we don't fix this soon, this is going to be like another big tobacco dom where 60 years from now, when people are finally going, okay, yeah, it's bad for you, it's addictive, we're going to lose many generations of young people to psychosis and sadly to suicide.
Yes, indeed. And it's good that we're definitely able to put our foot on the gas with it now, as opposed to waiting down the line and it's
trying to put the brakes on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, trying to put the brakes on it down.
Yeah, that was a good analogy there. Yeah, I do think we need to, we have 3,000 ambassadors now already in a year with our nonprofit. We'd love for people to join us. There's, no cost. We have Facebook, a group, a very active Facebook group. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out. But if they go to johnnysambassadors.org, there's a menu that says join, and they can find all sorts of ways to get involved. We have a big walk every year. This year it's on September 19th. Where people walk where they are or join one of our 26 teams we have so far. And so that's all on our website. So we'd love for people to learn more and to get involved with our mission. That's why we call it Ambassadors.
Oh, yeah, that's right, indeed. It's definitely an honorable mission, indeed, because you're so right. It's like on face value, folks be like, oh, it's just Mary Jane. Ain't nothing wrong with it. But no, it's actually something way deeper.
Totally different drug now.
Yeah. And it's like edibles. It's like you think edible arrangements, but no, it's actually not edible arrangements. It's actually THC in freaking candy form. Who knew a gummy bear could have you almost suicidal if you have a whole bag of them?
And in the emergency room for poison control, especially if children get a hold of them, they can cause comas. The edibles are very dangerous because they're metabolized differently. So they take the very potent oils, 80%, 90% oil that's distilled, and then put that, say, in a gummy bear, there's 50 milligrams and a serving size is 10 milligrams. So what, is the kid going to just like bite off an ear? Is that what no, they're going to, right? They're going to put the whole thing in their mouth and they're going to eat another one. And then a half hour later, they go, I don't feel anything. And they eat another one. And this is how people overdose and end up poisoned from very, very high amounts of toxic THC. Scary stuff.
Yes, indeed. Scary stuff indeed. Man. Well, and speaking of youth, there's a magical question that every guest gets to receive before they make a run for it. And that is, if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time in the current year of 2021 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself? Besides avoiding dabbing, of course.
I would say, thank goodness I made it to 25 without using marijuana. And now I'm going to share with my friends. I'm very proud that we have 2 other children who are both on our board of directors. Our 20-year-old son had a friend who came to him and said, I'm having cold sweats, I'm vomiting. And my son said, dude, knock off the weed. And he said, that's not what it is. He said, don't use it for 2 weeks. And sure enough, guess what? All of his symptoms went away. And now he is one of Johnny's ambassadors too. So it's just going to take peer-to-peer, one at a time. If I were 25, I would say, this is real, right? This happened to me, and I would make people pay attention to me. I think that's what it's going to take.
There you have it, folks. There you have it, folks. Be an ambassador, y'all. Get the message out there, y'all. I'm telling you, got to spread this around like butter on bread. I'm telling you, like the biggest loaf on earth with all the butter, metaphorically, y'all. Got to spread it. Heck, even like peanut butter and jelly.
And the love. And spread the love too.
Oh yeah, that's right. Make sure
love,
it's
not drugs.
There you go. That's right.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it.
My pleasure indeed. So any other parting words before we close up shop, Laura?
No, I just want to thank you for taking the risk to talk about this, as usually it can be a contentious subject. And again, we're really focusing on youth and adolescent brain development and making sure that kids know, hey, there's a reason why it's 21 and don't be going and getting med cards at 18 because you are definitely going to harm your brain. So let's focus on things like family and sports and activities and things that are natural highs, and not use all the marijuana. And I thank you for taking the chance and having me on.
You just got done listening to another powerful, power-packed episode of the Going North podcast. I hope you really enjoyed what you heard. Go check out the guest stuff. It's all in the show notes on the website, donbrightman.com, and also reach out to those that you've just heard as well. And keep going north.